on with Judge Beridon, who I'm super excited to have tonight. Also, the fact that he is already judge. We're going to re-elect him here in 55 days. And, it's exciting times, and certainly I was involved in the coordinated judicial campaign in 2018, and it was a big win getting Judge Beridon into this seat. And as Dems have made some progress in kind of inroads into the Hamilton County courthouse after 100 years of Republican control, give or take, basically since the beginning of time. So with that, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop those in the comments. As you see me looking around, it's kind of like the control panel here, so I'm keeping an eye on the comments and different things like that. We've got folks on Twitter live now at Derek Bauman on Twitter, Derek Bauman on YouTube, and a couple of different Facebook channels and the various groups that we share too. So with that being said, we've got a lot of folks joining us. Tom, Judge Beridon, can I call you Tom?
You can call me Tom, Derek. That's fine.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know a lot of people, I've already gotten the feedback. Excited to hear from Tom, from Judge Beridon tonight.
Well, thanks for having me. I actually, just before jumping on this, I was listening in on the collaborative agreement review over at the Women's Club. Iris Rowley and who else was on there? A bunch of other people are on there talking about what we've accomplished in the city of Cincinnati and what we still need to do. So it was good to hear that. It's great to hear people talking about that. It's a little disheartening that we still have a lot of progress to go, but we will get there. So it is good to be here and talk about what we are doing right now at the courthouse, what's been different, what we're trying to do even more different now, and to talk a little about why I'm running. So one of the things that I know from watching the show is you do like a nice overview background. So I basically started out as a young man raised by a single mother over in Finneytown, just up the road. My dad was over in Hyde Park, so my parents got divorced, but lived most with my mom, went to Finneytown High School, played football, wrestled, ran track there, went up to OU for college and came back home for law school. So one of the few things that people don't know about me is that between law school and college and law school, I was actually a nanny for 9 months, taking care of 3 boys over in the North Avondale area. So had a lot of fun there. Unfortunately, one of my last days, I tore my meniscus and then had surgery the day before we started law school. So always near and dear to my name. So
you have the patience for dealing with young kids. It probably serves you well on the bench, I'm assuming.
It did help. It's true. And that doesn't always help me so much with my kids, but yeah, on the bench, that experience does help dealing with different situations. It actually really helped me when right after law school, my first job, the first day after I was sworn in, I started at the Hamilton County Public Defender's Office in the juvenile division, where I was for 3 years. And I know, Derek, you know about juvenile division and juvenile court, but for those who don't, we have a specific court in Hamilton County that deals with juveniles when they're arrested, anyone who's under 18. We have an incredibly dedicated group of public defenders who work there. I truly feel doing God's work because it's very difficult. Back when I was there, we defended children in the morning. So this was against not criminal charges because juveniles can't be charged criminally. They're charged under a civil statute for committing a criminal violation. And in the afternoon, we did dependency hearing, where we represented adults who were trying to regain custody of their children or gain custody of their children if they were if they weren't in a married relationship. So I did that for 3 years. It was incredibly fulfilling work. I think when you start out as a public defender, a lot of ways that always stays with you no matter what is your first job. It's extremely gut-wrenching working with families and with children who have been accused of heinous crimes. And you have to defend them when their level of understanding and comprehension obviously is so much less than an adult. It creates creates a lot of responsibility for the attorney. And I'm always glad when public defenders are in my room now. They get the greatest respect, as everyone does. But I let them know that the work they're doing is very important because I don't think they hear that enough. I then went over to the other side, actually, as a prosecutor for the city of Cincinnati. Little backstory. A lot of people don't know the difference between the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office and the City Prosecutor's Office. Hamilton County Prosecutor Office handles all felony level cases in the county, and they also handle misdemeanor cases for municipalities that do not have prosecutors. The city of Cincinnati only handles misdemeanor prosecutions that occur within the city of Cincinnati. Now, I started that in 2004. In 2001 and 2003, though, I was very fortunate to run David Crowley's city council campaigns. At that time, the public defender's office was not a full-time job, so we were able to run second jobs. Most people had civil practices on the side. I decided to run the city council campaign. So that was extremely rewarding working with David. It was one of the highlights of my life. I met my wife on that campaign. Alyson was working for the AFL-CIO at that time. So the Crowleys are always very special to me. So really took a lot out of that. But at the time, you couldn't work for the city and be involved with politics. We had a mini Hatch Act that prevented people from contributing, working on, or supporting political candidates. That's since been overturned. Actually, Al Gerhardstein, who was on the call tonight, was the attorney that had that change. And now city employees can endorse, support candidates all the way down to City Hall. They can't actually support anyone running for city council, which makes sense. Mm-hmm. I was a city prosecutor for about 3 years. One of the highlights of my career, I was actually in District 4 as a neighborhood officer. So I actually had a desk in the bullpen down in the neighborhood office. Never sure if you've been in District 4. It is one of the most brutalist designed police offices I've ever been in. It is solid concrete with no windows. The majority of the building is underground. The sub-basement used to hold a shooting range, which hopefully they did get all the lead out, but it was really great. I got to work day in, day out with police officers and community members, going to community council meetings at night. We really worked on a lot of quality of life issues, dealing with vacated properties, a lot of stuff with solicitation and drug use, and also property crimes or property violations for people who are putting things up with illegal zoning, doing illegal building additions, just basically being out in the neighborhood, being someone for citizens to talk to if they had an issue so that we could get them resolved. And Chief Isaac actually was the captain out there at the time, so I was able to work with him a lot and really learned a lot about what it means to be an officer, also what it means to be in the community. I was going to say, being with them day in and day out, the danger that officers go through is something that's always on my mind. It's also something that I remember how much the officers in District 4 treated the people in the community with respect and valued their opinions about what was going on and really viewed themselves as a resource for the community. And that's something that I modeled. After that, I was lucky enough to be the administrative hearing officer for the city for about 7 years, where I heard cases about what I used to be prosecuting as a prosecutor. We used to say we handle violations all the way down from tall grass to major environmental. So from a $50 fine all the way up to a $15,000 fine. My office actually was also the office that was originally slated to handle any of the gender assignment therapy cases. We also handled the solicitation vehicle seizure cases. So serious issues within the city for different reasons. Chris Liu, who is running it now, is actually taking it a step further and actually did.
Well, let me interrupt you right there for a moment.
No, go ahead. I'll keep talking. I do that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. We want to hear this, and this is important stuff. And one of the things I love about on the show and having folks on is I learn something new all the time, and so I think it's really important to point out, in your background, kind of that breadth of experience that you've had, especially if, like, from the community perspective per se, and where it's not just the legal background, but you've been, involved in, running a council campaign. So, running for office isn't something that's foreign to you, and I think is very beneficial. But also, being engaged in the community on the front end before running for office. How do you feel that that's, like, kind of shaped or broadened your base of experience that can help you, in your role on the bench?
Okay, I'm going to That's a great question, Derek, and I'm going to answer it, but I got to put one thing in real quick. We're dealing with a lot of stuff with the campaign right now because of COVID. So we're on the phone a lot. My wife is also ran a lot of campaigns, and we're working with people over at Good Government Group and John Michael Moore. And if you'd ask them, they'd say my prior experience in running campaigns is a huge pain in the ass because I feel like I know stuff and I really don't nowadays. It's been so long. When I used to run campaigns, we didn't have cell phones. I used to have to carry quarters to be able to use a payphone. And we were so excited when we had MapSpace or MapQuest that we could print out turn-by-turn directions to where we were going. It's changed so much. But that experience, though, my breadth of experience coming up, doing all those things that I have with the public defender, with the prosecutor, with the civil attorneys, it gives me just a lot of respect for the people who are coming in front of me. I've done a lot of the things that the attorneys coming before me are doing now. They are doing a lot better. Most of them are specialists. Hamilton County is incredibly lucky to have the talented bar that we do have. But I also understand that a civil attorney is just working as hard for their client as a criminal attorney is. And just because there is not a threat of jail for their client doesn't mean that my office, my courtroom, shouldn't give them as much respect as I give every other attorney that goes in there. One of the things that as a civil attorney always frustrated me is I'd go into a hearing expecting to have a trial, and I would find that we got moved to a visiting judge because the judge had a criminal trial going. That can happen sometimes, but Ginger Bach, who you had on last week, is my staff attorney. She is incredible. She handles all of the scheduling for the civil, and Adam Iser is my criminal bailiff. They sit next to each other and they work in concert with me to make sure that we don't have things that overlap on scheduling. With COVID, it's been challenging because for 3 months we couldn't have any real trials. We did stuff over Zoom, which was really good. But when you come into my courtroom, you know that I've been in your shoes and that we will treat you with respect. We don't waste your time. We issue thoroughly written decisions because it's important. When you're going back to your client telling why you won or lost, that you can point to something that the judge wrote down rather than just going, the judge said you lost. That's just frustrating. And it's very easy for my courtroom, for the people I work with, to make sure that that doesn't happen.
No, and that's a great point. And kind of dovetailing into that, one of the things I wanted to touch on with you, because I was out there hustling, working for the coordinated campaign in 2018, which was a great experience. And we got a lot of our folks in there, and some more to come, like Ginger, for example. But what was now that you've been there 2 years, and typically, tell me, just explain or refresh my memory for those that don't know, why it is that you're running again after 2 years. It's typically like 6 years for a judicial term, right?
Exactly.
And so tell us how that went, and then kind of along those lines, like what's your experience been in terms of we think about we're running for office, and then until you actually get there, what like the reality versus expectations, even though you've spent a lot of time in the courtroom, it's different when you're the guy sitting up there or the gal, whoever it may be.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. So Judge Marsh was elected to the Court of Appeals back in 2014. Mm-hmm. She had just been elected to the Court of Common Pleas. She had been reelected. When she got elected to the Court of Appeals, her seat became open, and Governor Kasich at the time appointed a local attorney, Kurt Hartman, for the seat. Because it was an unexpired term, he had to run at the next election, which was the 2018 election. I agreed at the time to run. I thought it was an important seat. I thought my voice could be well heard. I thought it could be a good service to the community. Because, though, it was an unexpired term, the term expires in 2021. I had to also run again for re-election in 2020. So it's a strange term, as it turns out. Normally, if a judge is elected to another bench and there's an appointment, they would run then at the next general. But because Judge Myers, because Judge Myers had been elected so early since her previous election, it created a 2-election issue right there. So, and if you had told me in 2018 that the only time I would be seeing Derek was when we were walking 6 feet apart from each other with a mask on, and we're trying to figure out if we fist or elbow bump. I would have thought you're crazy. This is the guy who runs up behind me and gives me a nice bump when he sees me to let us know he's there, but we can't do that.
Right.
The fact that I was able to do the collaborative thing tonight, look at the West Side Democratic Club, and then still be on here is a benefit of the whole COVID issue right now and with Zoom. But man, I miss being out there. I love campaigning. It goes all the way back for when my mom was friend with Roxanne Qualls, with Ron Wall and Bob Gurdon back when I was growing up, and she was running for office. Ted Strickland when he was at OU. Just being out there, talking to people, finding out what their issues are in the community, what they need help with, what they're looking for from a public official. David really taught me. David Crowley was a social worker, just like my mom. And, you know, when you're an elected official, you're a servant of the people. Your job is there to serve the people, and you are there to help their interests. As a judge, it's a little different. Like you said, I had been around judges a lot. I had practiced on common pleas, municipal court, and done administrative hearings. But the first sentencing I did, I think, is when it really hits home, is when you're trying to make a decision after a person who's either pled guilty or been found guilty by a jury or by me at a bench trial, how long to sentence that person to prison. And dealing with the mandatory minimums that we have for different crimes, along with gun specifications that we have for different crimes, can really makes, I must not bring it home. It's hard, and it's supposed to be hard. And that's when you realize if you want to be a judge. But when you do that and you understand, well, you have to live with the decision, and it's important that you factor everything in afterwards if you can live with the decision. I've had defendants who have cursed me out when they've been leaving. That doesn't happen very often. Most often they understand what they've done and accepted their sentence. I've had mothers thank me for the sentences. I've had some mothers curse me as they walk out the room, and I understand that. It's difficult, and separating yourself from that area and making the decision based on the law and the factors that are behind it is difficult. And if you want to be a judge, if you want to be a common pleas judge, you have to be willing to make those decisions because they're your decisions. Right. It is strange coming from being the prosecutor, the public defender, and telling your client or the victim, we've done our best case, now it's up to the judge to decide. Well, now you're the judge. You have to make that decision. You have to factor everything in, and you need to be right. So that's when it really hit home.
No, and that's a great point. And when you think about it, I've spent, a lot of time over the years in courtrooms and sitting there, you're kind of hanging on that decision, whatever it may be, or if it's a jury trial. But when you think about it, and not only for the suspect or the person that's on trial, but the victim and the prosecution and the well-being of society, right? There's so many of these things that you have to balance, and then we want to get the person help, and maybe if they can be rehabilitated, or if there's an underlying drug problem that you can address, or mental illness, or all of these types of things. But it's really an immense burden. I kind of struggle for the proper word as well. But that's a lot. On a person to have that that authority and that really power to take someone's freedom away for years and years and years. It's a really powerful stuff when you sit back and think about it in those terms.
And you need to. When you are doing that, you have to feel the weight. It's something that weighs on me while I'm doing the sentencing. It's what makes me, you just have to be focused. I don't get a bad day as a judge. I get bad days as a husband sometimes. I get bad days as a dad sometimes, more often than I'd like. But as a judge, I don't get them because there's too much responsibility on everyone who's in that room for something that happens. You brought it up. It's the defendant who's in front of me. If they're found innocent on charges, we've had bench trials where charges have been I found the person not guilty. I found them guilty. It's the victim who's coming in to testify. It's the mother of the defendant. It's the mother of the victim. It's all of those people that are relying on you as the judge to be the person who is making the steady decision and is making the right decision. Now, the right decision may not be something that everyone agrees with, and I understand that. But it's a decision that they have to understand why it was made and that they can't accept it. That's difficult, and it's good. My background does help me with that. Being a public defender in juvenile division with kids taught me how to deal empathetically with defendants. Being a prosecutor made me understand how hard it is for a victim to come in and testify sometimes. Mm-hmm. Being in both cases, having to hold a mother's hand of a victim or of a defendant, made me realize that the people who are surrounded of these crimes or these charges also are affected. And it's important that when they come into a courtroom, they're respected and that they understand that they will be heard under the new Marsy's law. Victims do have different rights now of speaking up. But, I get a lot of letters for sentencing from parents, from friends, and I read all of them. I take them all into consideration. And it is a community that's affected when a crime is committed. Even if the person's found not guilty, most likely there was a crime committed at some point. Maybe that wasn't the right person charged, or there was some trauma involved, and you have to take that into consideration.
No, that's good stuff, and that kind of a conversation. I mean, that's really like what I like to get to, kind of the meat of it on the show, is kind of pull that out and really touch on the kind of the human aspect of this, which a lot of times, unfortunately, if you've been a defendant and you go in there and your kind of life is hanging in the balance, there's this person sitting up there with the robes and the whole thing. And, even from my perspective, being in that role as a police officer is kind of a awe-inspiring, thing. And so to kind of really touch on that human element, a lot of times people don't get to hear this kind of stuff. And so I think it's very powerful to touch on. It's crazy. Time goes so fast. I mean, we're coming up on a half hour already, and we've got a lot of people in with us. We were a few minutes late getting on, but time flies. And I want to do, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I do want to kind of circle back to the bigger picture of the campaign. So one of the things we're focused on, and we've touched on for folks that have watched us with the number of judicial candidates that we've had on, is how the parties endorse, but yet there's not a D or R by the name, because we want the judiciary to be independent. And I'm not going to find one way because you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, but yet the parties do endorse, and there are some significant policy differences in approach. Having said that, from the campaign perspective, you won by a handful of votes, right? It was 200, and what was the number? 200? It
was election night. It was like 463, but actually with provisionals, I was up to 2,000 something.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So your lead grew. That's good. But I think the message is that in a county of, what's the population of Hamilton County? A lot.
I should know that. I don't.
Off the top of my head, but you're talking about an election night difference of a couple of hundred votes. In a city or a county the size of Hamilton County. So literally every vote counts. And not only that, when you go in to vote, if you want to vote for the Democratic slate, you may not know, because when you get down to the judges on the ballot, there's no D or R there. And it's like, I don't know all these folks and who they are. So what's the model? What should we do? How do we reelect Judge Beridon and then make sure that we know who we need to vote for when we go into the booth?
That's a great question, Derek. And so a couple parts to that. In 2018, I was actually on the AFTAB ballot. I was actually on the second page. So I was the only candidate on the second page. And there was issue 1, which was the the legalization and reduction of misdemeanor of certain drug offenses. So we literally had a mail piece that said, flip the ballot. Find Judge Beridon, flip the ballot, because there were people who were getting the absentee ballot and they were like, where are you? I'm like, we're on the second page. And we didn't realize that until, people started getting the absentee ballot, that was an issue. And luckily we have a great team, like I said before, John Michael, who's able to get something out really quick in the mail for us to let people know. We're telling people right now to vote from the bottom up. So start at the end and work your way up. In 2018, we had an incredible slate of candidates. who were out every weekend. We have the same different incredible candidates, except for me and Ginger and Pavin. But we've got 13 of us right now, and we're out every weekend dropping literature because we can't talk to voters. We have door hangers that we put on people's doors that have our pictures and names on it. This is the story that ties into. We were at the Board of Election on one of the early voting days. Thank you. Actually, other one up. Okay, put that back up for a second. So, see, that I'm not on that picture. Right. Rip it apart. I called them yesterday to make sure, because my stepmother is stapling these things at headquarters for everybody, to make sure that they put the judicial spaces facing out. Because I like to write a little high if I'm dropping it off. But one of the early voting days, we had this gentleman, an older gentleman, get out of his truck and was walking up to the door. And we said, "Sir, do you need a judicial sample ballot? Do you need a judicial sample ballot?" And he smiled and he dug into his pocket and he pulled out a piece of paper that was pretty much folded up like this. And he's walking and we're like, "What is he doing?" And he's unfolding it. And it was the first judicial slate card that we had done. And we had hit, you can tell, you know this, when you do a bunch of stuff on the campaign, you can tell how old the piece is because you make changes as you go on. This is one of the first things we had handed out like 4 or 5 months ago. And after I got done voting, I actually ran over and said hi and said, "Where did you get that?" He said, "Oh, I got this, I think he got it from Pierre Bergeron, who's now Judge Bergeron. I got it from that Bergeron guy. Was that you?" I'm like, "No, I'm Beridon. We're different." And he said, "I got this from you at St. Vivian's Festival." And I just folded it up and stuck it in my glove compartment because I never know who the judges are. You know, it's not even a D or an R. Most people never experience going in front of a judge in their lives. They don't know how important it is as to different agreements that come through. Talking about the collaborative agreement, that was a federal case, but there's a lot of things that led up to that in state court. A lot of cases with property and how things are handled affect people's everyday lives and they don't realize that. So the big important thing is just to get our names out and just to let people know that there are races. You brought this up at the beginning, Derek, was that for 100 years, there was pretty much a Republican-controlled courthouse, and it still is. If we win every seat, then it would actually flip over to the Democrats being in control. But for a long time, there were no opponents. You know, candidates who were sitting on the bench, no one ran against them. And if we did have someone running against them, they may not have been the most experienced person to run. And in 2018, we had an incredible slate, and that slate led us to 2020. We have a lot of incredible people running this year. We need that kind of diversity on the bench, not just ethnic diversity, but also life experience diversity. We need people who have been public defenders, who have been prosecutors, who have done incredibly complex civil litigation. We need defense side, prosecution side, because it builds a stronger courthouse. When we have different points of view and different opinions on things, when we do get together as judges, it helps create a more collaborative working environment. So we come up with solutions to make things better for everyone. And that comes from reporting statistics as to sentencing, to expanding our jury pool, to keeping a lot of the stuff that we got through COVID right now with our Zoom dockets for civil management and for staggering our court dockets. Instead of just starting at 9, courts are starting at 9, 11, and 1. So just having a diversity of thought on the bench helps. I'm lucky, and I think one of the things people recognize is that I have that diversity of experience. That is a benefit to a judge being on a bench, and that's what I hope to bring back to the bench in 2020 with this election.
Oh, it's a great message, man. You got me. I was already fired up, and now I'm even more fired up to go out there and elbow bump or whatever the hell we're allowed to do right now. But just a final note, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this because it comes up from everybody that was kind of, and hopefully we'll see what the future holds in 2021, talking about a different kind of race. But the impact that David Crowley had, former vice mayor and Cincinnati city council member, I think of like the NFL coaching tree. Like you see these coaches, you know, somebody goes back to Bill Walsh and somebody goes back to whomever, Chuck Noll maybe or something, I don't know. But still, you know, Michelle Dillingham, Chris Seelbach, Sean Baker, yourself, any number of others that were just kind of came up under David Crowley and never failed to mention that and how powerful of a figure and a voice and a mentor, I think would probably be a good word. Can you just touch on that for just a moment? What his, because it seems like a pretty doggone good person to emulate, in my view. What his impact that he, of course, it's, rest his soul, he's no longer with us, but just the impact that he had politically and otherwise.
So there's very few people in my life that I've met that just project honesty and integrity, and with strength as well. David understood that people are flawed and that everyone's flawed and that we need to help each other as a community. God blessed him with an incredible level of intelligence, with empathy, with just the social skills that you get of being a bartender or a tavern owner's son on Mount Adams. Wrapping all that together with some of the most kind words I've ever gotten from a man who's also pretty much also told me to get off my ass and get to work. He wasn't a softie. He was a hard guy to work for. He made some decisions that were incredibly tough. He was one of the few people who came out against the war, and that was after his first election. This was back when we had 2-year terms. And he did it because that's what he believed, and he didn't give a damn how it would affect his election. And that was, you want to talk about a tight race. That was 356 votes on election night after 2003. And we had to go back and do a recount of the ballots. But you can't really talk about integrity in politics without mentioning David Crowley. And I know you listed Michelle, you listed Chris, Rocky Murs, but there's also so many people that I think he touched while he was on council with them. And that, David Pepper is one of those that definitely was very influenced by David. Him and Mark Mallard had lots of conversations going back and forth. So I just think he attracted people who want to do well and help the community because he was a beacon for that because of how much he did want to do that.
No, that's amazing stuff, and I personally never got the opportunity to know him. I definitely feel like I missed out on that, but I get the kind of try to download the vibe that I get from you all, and he's certainly a political, not only political, but just a public and civic figure in the history of Cincinnati who I think just did a lot of great things for our city, including bringing up the next generation. So I think there's something to take away from that. It's like, how can we pass on to the next group, whomever it may be. So with that,
it's kind of cool seeing those. Actually, really quick, Derek. Sorry, it's kind of cool seeing those Crowley signs out now for Scott running for treasurer. It's interesting. It's the logo, which is
right.
It's kind of weird being the guy who helped develop that, seeing it out and around, which is great. And Scott was actually city prosecutor and was actually one of my mentees when I was a prosecutor. So it's cool how it comes full circle. And I think that hopefully David's legacy will live on through public service, through all of us who worked with him and emulated what he did.
No, that's fantastic stuff. And so with that, as we're kind of coming to a close here at the end of our time, one of the things I always like to do, because it's another weird aspect of judicial campaigning in terms
Keep
of
worrying me on that.
that's surrounding it. So you guys need to raise money to run a campaign, like those yard signs, and the sign behind you doesn't pay for itself. But yet you're actually not allowed to ask for money. I don't know. Maybe it's a blessing or a curse, because one of the worst parts about running for any kind of campaign, you got to call people up and ask for money.
You know about that, don't you?
Yeah. A little something about it. Not exactly everybody's idea of a good time, but with that being said, I am allowed to, on your behalf, say that you can all go to your website and drop a little Scooby snack on there to re-elect Judge Beridon. We know how close this race was in the past. We cannot take anything for granted, although it's amazing to see how more and more organized the party is getting, and everybody's kind of playing nice together, and that kind of teamwork is fantastic. So if I want to volunteer, or because there's stuff we can do on the phones and texting, or if I want to make a contribution, where do I go to do that? How can I help to reelect Judge Beridon?
JudgeBeridon.com is the website. We have a donate and a volunteer button. Click either one. We're doing a lot of judicial canvases. We're going out and it's not really a canvas, it's a lit drop. We're also doing phone calls. If you sign up, we'll find something for you to do in your neighborhood, or if you want to try something new, we will get you out there. If you have students who need to get service hours, we can definitely do that with lit drops. It's socially distanced. It follows all the CDC guidelines with keeping everybody safe. Now, Jack, I want to actually throw it back to you real quick. So you did a lot in 2018, but you're actually doing a lot now. I'm seeing you at a lot of these coordinated events. We're doing the lit drops. How are you feeling about the energy this year, about what we're doing as an entire slate? What's your feeling about that?
Well, so when I ran for council in 2017, I didn't quite make it over the hump. We were about 3,500 votes short or something like that. But I'm claiming victory in that my campaign manager, Eddie Davenport, is now the executive director of the party and led the coordinated judicial campaign in and so if nothing else came out of that campaign, kind of taking Eddie to the next level, because he did an amazing job, with my campaign in 2017. And I think he's doing a great job with the party now.
Oh, he's doing a great job now. He's helping out so much for judicials. Yeah.
Indeed. And so kind of just it's like herding cats, getting us all going in the same direction, right? We're all wanting to run around kind of willy-nilly every place. And that level of organization, and when you think about it, this is really important stuff, not only for what's going on here in Cincinnati, in Hamilton County, in our courthouse. We talked about the 100-year reign of Republicans, lording over the Hamilton County courthouse, hiring all their relatives and all that kind of stuff. But nationally, I mean, like at this point, we are a county, not only the city of Cincinnati is very blue, but Hamilton County is like trending more and more blue. And in Ohio, where we're trying, let's be honest about it, get 45 the hell out of there. And we could play a role in doing that. So when you look at this bigger picture, like we're kind of at a very important nexus, nationally. And we're focused here on these local elections. But if we're doing all of what we need to do, then that all kind of flows up, right? And I want to start at the bottom on the back of the ballot so I can fill in the blanks for my judges first. But obviously, at the end of the day, we're trying to elect our slate, right? And I'm riding with Biden. So as far as I'm concerned, at this point, it's like it's not about me. It's about helping the team, and to the degree that we're all doing our little role. Like if I text 20 people today, and you text 20, and you text 20, that's the 400 vote difference that we need for Judge Beridon, and then that goes right up when we see nationally states that like the state of Wisconsin goes to 45 by 15,000 votes or something across the whole state. And so that's how we can all, I think, each individually play a very important role, in the collective. And for folks that are like, I don't know about this campaigning stuff, knocking on a door and like talking to a person, I'm a little scared of that or something. That's one of the benefits now. We're saying you don't have to do that. We just need to get these and everybody and make sure everybody's voted, make sure they know who to vote for. And so, you can take a clipboard and go out. You don't have, you're just hanging these on the door, and you get your steps in too for the day, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's crunch time, man. We got 55 days. Like let's roll. So so I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling energized, and now's the time, man. Let's do it. Let's get it done.
I agree. That's it. That's the best way to end it. Let's get it done.
All right.
Next? Let's go.
At Judge Beridon on Twitter, Facebook, all the rest of the socials.
Yep.
I enjoy your Instagram as well, and a little personal touch on there.
Yeah.
And what'd you tell me? JudgeBeridon.com. Is that right?
JudgeBeridon.com. Yes, sir.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I appreciate it. We had a few people stop in and just some general comments of thanks. Crystal Dandridge stopped by and saying hello, and so we appreciate that. And Tom, Judge Beridon, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Derek, thanks so much for having me. This was great. I love talking to you. Good to catch up, even though it's on video.
Right. Sounds good, man. All right. Well, we'll elbow bump.
There you go.
All right.
Okay.
All right, man. Have a great night.
You do the same. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Hey, at Derek Bauman, Twitter, YouTube. We're doing this now. We're going live to all the platforms, Facebook, you name it. We want to reach as many people as we can. So we appreciate each and every one of you for joining us. And please feel free to share this, especially on Facebook. Share the post. Yeah. You can go back and see it in my videos and spread the message. Re-elect Judge Beridon. Thanks, Tom. Have a great night.
You do the same. Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.